And if you really wanted to, you could put a sub underneath that false bit of boot and still have a boot. Great thought from Suzuki there. They were thinking of the younger driver that wants to put some bass in their car. You can put a false floor in there, put your sub under there, still have space for, you know, your McDonald's and stuff in the back of it. Right, what's up guys? So today you join me from the driver's seat of a 2011 Suzuki Swift Sport. Now this one has the 1.6 litre VVTI engine producing 125 brake horsepower from the factory. This one itself has done 37,000 miles, barely running in my books. I usually get into stuff that's got 100,000 plus, so to me that is absolutely nothing. So this car I really wanted to do because it is, you know, cheap to run and they're readily available, and I do see a lot of them around on the streets. So this one is sat on 35mm H&R lowering springs with Koni shocks, so it brings it down a little bit from the standard ride height. This has also had a back box delete on it as well. Oh, I like that. Ram. Oh, I like that. That is so fucking cool right now. The pickup through first, second and third gear is pretty good. The 1.6 litre engine is more than enough for this little car to propel it down the road. Good little soundtrack to it as well, pops and bangs as you come off the accelerator and burble down into the rev. Now, this being a Swift Sport means it has a couple of different things from the normal Swift. It has the twin exit exhaust system on the back with all the cutouts for the back bumper. It has the sports seats in it as well, which are, you know, relatively supportive, quite firm if I'm honest, but still give a good feel over the standard ones. You've got a little bit more bolster action to keep you in the seat as you go round your corners. The gearbox has got a good feel, as well as the clutch. It feels like it's got a short shift in it really. You can sort of pivot the gear selector into your fancied gear, which makes for some nice aggressive gear changes if needs be. So when you do select, you know, from third into fourth, there's only a short sort of ratio from you going from that gear into that gear. I must say the driving position, although relatively high, isn't too bad. The dash does sort of slope down, so it gives a bit more of a, higher feel in the car than you would normally. But everything's sort of where it should be. You know, the dials are where they should be. Everything seems to be at arm's length, which isn't too bad. Although, as I've encountered before, being high up in the car isn't a bad thing. You've got great visibility. You can see in front of you, you can see behind you, you can see exactly where the car sort of starts and stops when you're parking. The Koni shocks and springs give a good feel to the car, although, a little bit more sporty, don't get me wrong. The wheels themselves are Lenzos, 7.5-inch all-round with a 205 45 17-inch tyre on them. Still fantastically grippy. There's no sort of stretch tyre on this, so you can still chuck it around the corners if you wish to. But when you do come to a good straight, that little 1.6 litre engine absolutely sings, and it revs really quickly, which is quite nice. And you're able to sort of drop down your gears, chuck it into a corner, come out the other side. When you do come out the other side, you've sort of got the power where you want it to be. It's sort of, doesn't take a lot of revving to get it into where you want the power. The brakes, I've got to admit, are the highlight of the car though. It's currently sat on some drilled and grooved brakes with EBC yellow stuff pads. Really do a fantastic job of braking this when you need to. And when you want to stamp on them, it is instant, like that. Fucking hell. Just like that. Good test there to see how good the brakes were, and they work very well. So what you've got to remember about these cars is they're very cheap to buy and they're easy to get finance on. So you know, as a younger driver, they'll be very easy to get yourself into. The only downside is though that these are relatively expensive to modify. There isn't any second-hand parts because I don't think there's a big enough following for them, which is a shame really. So you're, you know, sort of left out of pocket if you ever did actually want to do any modifications to this car. Another thing I am a huge fan of is the fact that there's a double-din Pioneer stereo in here, which is exactly the same as the one I used to have in my previous Golf. You've still got your steering controls, which to me is a great thing. Although, you know, you're only that far away from the actual head unit, don't get me wrong, it's still nice that the original, you know, buttons still work with the aftermarket stereo. Now, I spoke to the owner, Elliot. Unfortunately, with these, they do suffer from not that fantastic gearboxes and clutches. They do go within, you know, 100,000 miles, which is a bit of a shame, but it is a small car and it's built to a budget. So yeah, I think, you know, with these newer cars that are, you know, relatively sporty, I'd say, there is, you know, a lot of compromise with the sporty factors. You've still got, you know, a nice ride. Although this has been lowered 35mm, it's still a very good ride. The position of everything, the size of everything, you've still got more than enough space inside. This car also has keyless entry, which is pretty cool. Something nice to see on the newer, you know, smaller cars that are a little bit cheaper than maybe others. The Bridgestone Tires up front though, very, very good. I'm very impressed with those. Now obviously, this being a cheap new car, not only do you get, you know, quite a good insurance price, your insurance will be cheap on this car, you know, depending where you live and where you know, how bad you are when you were young and all that sort of business, how many points you got and all that sort of stuff. But I think they're relatively cheap to insure, and you got a good bit of power. And I'm thinking, you know, if I was 18, I'd think that this was a fantastic little car to be in. It'd be more than fast enough for what I wanted from the car. So guys, here we are, lovely field, lovely little setting in the background. So let's have a look around this Suzuki Swift Sport. To start with, you know, a couple of little bits that's different with the Sport to the standard. Obviously you've got this decal going down the side, white with the bit of checkers on it. You've got the twin exit back box at the back with the cut with a bit of mesh at the bottom. You've got the spoiler up the top, looking pretty good. Got this fantastic sort of metallic paint, very nice finish on the car. Modifications, obviously you've got the 35mm lowering springs and shocks. You've got the Lenzo BBS style wheels, 7.5J all round. No stretch tyres though, which is quite good, so you can still use this every day, you know, beating it up if you wish to. But yeah, I do like the style of these. The styling's very nice and it's very contemporary to, you know, sort of a new car that people would want. Relatively high, but, you know, like the Fiat 500, the same sort of height around you. You know, just bearing in mind that I'm sort of 5'8", 6 foot maybe, and it's, you know, sort of there, and that's lowered a little bit as well. So, you know, something to sort of think about. They are quite high up, but that means you've got, you know, a big boot space. Got fantastic boot space with this little cubby hole down there. There's a good little sort of stealth shelf there. And coming inside, you've got, you know, more than enough sort of headspace and room for a taller person. You've got enough room round you to, you know, not feel too cramped. Although it's just a small car, it doesn't feel like a small car inside. Dash setup, you've got an MPG meter up there. You've got your double din, and this has got loads of airbags around it. You know, very safe for the younger driver, which is always good. Obviously, sport seats as well, more hugging than the standards. Got some racing gear knob down there as well. Air conditioning is very good in this car as well. One thing I do want to point out though, which I love, is this Hydrodipped scuttle panel. And obviously a lot of people would know, you know, scuttle panels do get, you know, very sort of, you know, discoloured. You know, Elliot thought it was a good idea to get this bit, you know, carbon dipped with the Hydrodipped. The company that did it though is sat on the back of the car. Hydrotech from the Isle of Wight, the only people on the island that are doing that at the moment. So huge shout out to those guys. Very, very good prices, very, very good work. So yeah, overall, cheap to run, cheap to buy now at the end of the day. Good laugh, you know, looks good as well. More than enough safety, cheap to insure, which is always good. Modifications, you know, they are quite expensive, but don't get me wrong, a lot of new cars to modify are expensive, so that's just one of those things. I don't think there's a big enough following for these, which is a shame, for you to get, you know, the second-hand parts that you're after. But all in all, very cool little car. So what are my overall thoughts on this little Suzuki Swift? Well, if I was just, you know, about to pass my test and, you know, I had a cheeky bit of finance to get out, you know, all that sort of good stuff, this would be on my list to go and drive. It's very, you know, responsive. There's enough room in here for you to, you know, have a laugh with your mates if you want to. The owner said he gets through around, you know, 20 quid a week in petrol, which is absolutely crazy to me because I'm usually putting 20 quid a day in some of my cars, so to me that is ridiculously cheap. But overall, as a newish car, it's really nice to drive. You wouldn't find the clutch or the gearbox very, you know, hard to get through. As a younger driver, you know, with less experience, you wouldn't find yourself stalling it all the time, which is great. And if you really wanted to, you could put a sub underneath that false bit of boot and still have a boot. Great thought from Suzuki there. They were thinking of the younger driver that wants to put some bass in their car. You can put a false floor in there, put your sub under there, still have space for, you know, your McDonald's and stuff in the back of it. And I think, you know, space wise in here, you can still get people in the back, even with my driving position, you know, being quite far back in the car. You can get a full-sized adult in the back of the car still. Anyway guys, I hope you liked the video. Make sure you like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers guys.